will bring the cattle in Stark's girlhood home and remind her that Lannisters pay their debts.
It starts with a dead stag, a great bloody animal laid out on a table, and a man with rolled-up sleeves carefully pulling its guts out with his bare hands while lecturing his son about legacy. That's our introduction to Tywin Lannister, not sitting on a throne, not commanding an army, just butchering, calmly, precisely, like it's the most natural thing in the world. And if you pay attention, really pay attention, that image tells you everything about this man. Tywin Lannister doesn't just defeat his enemies, he opens them up. He pulls out everything inside them, and he does it without raising his voice. And yet, the show is doing something even cleverer than a simple character introduction here. The animal Tywin is gutting is a stag, the sigil of House Baratheon, the family currently sitting on the Iron Throne. It's foreshadowing wrapped in a butchering scene. Tywin is literally dismembering the symbol of royal power while talking about how his family needs to protect its legacy. Later, he'll skin fishes, the sigil of House Tully, right before the Red Wedding. The man communicates through carcasses. That's the kind of villain we're dealing with. Now, most people talk about Tywin as the greatest strategist in the show.
A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of a sheep.
The puppet master, the man who held the Seven Kingdoms together through sheer force of will and political cunning. And sure, there's truth in that. But here's what I think most people miss. Tywin Lannister is the most tragic figure in Game of Thrones. Not because he loses, he wins almost everything, but because the thing he cares about most, his family's legacy, is the very thing his own cruelty destroys. He spends his entire life building a dynasty, and by the time he dies, he's ensured that every single person carrying his blood either hates him, fears him, or has been broken by him. The house he built is a masterpiece, and it's completely empty. So let's set the stage. Tywin is born into shame. His father, Tytos Lannister, is a weak, laughable man who lets the great House Lannister become a joke. Vassal lords openly mock the Lannisters. Lesser houses refuse to pay their debts. The once proud lion is toothless, and everyone knows it. Young Tywin watches all of this, watches his father get humiliated, watches the family name get dragged through the dirt, and something inside him hardens into steel. He swears that House Lannister will never be weak again, not while he breathes. And look, you need to understand what happens next, because it's the foundation for every single thing Tywin does for the rest of his life. When House Rain and House Tarbeck rebel against Lannister rule, Tywin doesn't negotiate. He doesn't compromise. He doesn't accept their surrender. He wipes them off the map completely. Every man, woman, and child. He floods the mines of Castamere and drowns them all. And then he has a song written about it, the Rains of Castamere, so that every lord in Westeros will hear it and remember what happens when you challenge House Lannister. That's not just warfare, that's branding. Tywin turned a massacre into a marketing campaign, and it works. For decades, all you have to do is play that song at a feast and lords start sweating. Now here's what makes the Castamere story so revealing about Tywin as a person. He could have defeated the Rains and accepted their surrender. He could have stripped them of their lands, taken hostages, made an example of the leaders, and spared the rest. That's what most lords would have done. But Tywin didn't want an example. He wanted an extinction. He wanted a silence where a family used to be. Because in Tywin's mind, leaving survivors means leaving the possibility of revenge. Leaving survivors means showing mercy. And mercy is what his father showed, and his father's mercy nearly destroyed them.
A weak man who nearly destroyed our house and name.
So Tywin chose total annihilation, and he made sure the entire realm knew about it. That choice, that absolute uncompromising refusal to leave anything standing, is the key to understanding everything that follows. It's why the Red Wedding happens. It's why Oberyn Martell dies. It's why Tyrion ends up with a crossbow in his hands. Tywin's first lesson was destroy completely or don't bother at all, and he never learned a second one. The thing is, this is where we see the core of Tywin's philosophy crystallize. It is safer to be feared than loved. He follows this principle like a religion. Every decision, every alliance, every betrayal, it all comes back to the same calculation. Fear lasts, love fades. Loyalty bought with gold and cemented with terror is the only kind you can count on. And for most of his life, the results seem to prove him right. Tywin becomes the richest man in Westeros, the most feared lord in the realm. He prefers to win with a quill and paper rather than a sword, because a well-written letter can accomplish what an army of 10,000 men cannot, and it's cheaper.
Kill 10,000 men in battle than a dozen at dinner.
And here's something fascinating. There's one brief stretch where we actually see what Tywin might have been like if he'd allowed himself to be human. At Harrenhal, when Arya Stark is serving as his cupbearer, you can see flickers of something almost warm. He recognizes her intelligence. He talks to her. He even seems to enjoy her company.
My cupbearer can read better than you.
When she slips up and reveals she can read, Tywin doesn't punish her. He's intrigued. He asks her questions about her father, about what she's been taught, and you can see a man who, in another life, might have been a decent father.
You're a sharp little thing, aren't you?
He respects cleverness, even in a lowborn girl, especially in a lowborn girl. It's one of the only times in the entire show where Tywin has a genuine, unguarded conversation with someone who isn't trying to take something from him. And Arya, a child he doesn't know, is his enemy's daughter, a girl whose family he is actively working to destroy, gets more kindness from Tywin Lannister than his own son Tyrion has received in a lifetime.
This will be my last war, win or lose.
Have you ever lost before?
And Tywin answers honestly, without posturing, without intimidation. Just one person talking to another.
You think I'd be in my position if I'd lost a war?
That's not just irony. That's the tragedy of the whole character, compressed into a few quiet scenes over dinner. Somewhere inside the Great Lion is a man who might have known how to connect with people. He just chose, decades ago, to wall that man off. And now the wall is permanent. But here's where the tragedy starts to creep in, because Tywin applies this same cold philosophy to the people he's supposed to love most, his children. I mean, think about the way Tywin treats Jaime, Cersei, and Tyrion. He doesn't see 3 children. He sees 3 assets, 3 pieces on a board. Jaime is the golden heir, handsome, strong, everything a lord could want.
When you hear them whispering Kingslayer behind your back, doesn't it bother you?
But Jaime threw it away by joining the Kingsguard, and Tywin has never forgiven him for it. Cersei is the political weapon, married off to Robert Baratheon to cement an alliance, her own desires completely irrelevant. And Tyrion, well, Tyrion is the wound that never heals.
You who killed your mother to come into the world, you are an ill-made, spiteful little creature.
You see, Tyrion killed Tywin's wife Joanna in childbirth, not deliberately, obviously, but Tywin has never been able to separate the fact from the feeling. Joanna was, by all accounts, the only person Tywin ever truly loved, the one human being who could make him smile. People who knew them said that Tywin Lannister ruled the 7 kingdoms, but Joanna Lannister ruled Tywin. She was the warmth in a cold man, and she died bringing Tyrion into the world, a dwarf no less, a son who, in Tywin's eyes, is a walking monument to everything he lost. So Tywin punishes Tyrion. Not once, not in a single moment of grief. He punishes him constantly, endlessly, for the crime of existing. He refuses to name Tyrion his heir. He calls him a curse. He threatens to have any woman Tyrion loves killed, and follows through on that threat when he has Tyrion's first wife, Tisha, brutalized and sent away. He takes every opportunity to remind his youngest son that he is unwanted,
The day that you were born, I wanted to carry you into the sea and let the waves wash you.
unloved, and unworthy of the Lannister name. And the cruelest part isn't the insults or the threats, it's the occasional acknowledgement, because every now and then, Tywin gives Tyrion a task, makes him acting Hand of the King, sends him to manage the city's defenses. and Tyrion excels every single time. And every single time, Tywin takes it back. He dangles competence in front of Tyrion like a treat, lets him taste what it would feel like to be valued, and then snatches it away. That pattern, hope, then rejection, is the same cruelty Ramsay Bolton uses on Theon. The only difference is that Tywin does it with a cold stare and a cutting remark instead of a knife. And here's the irony that sits at the heart of this entire arc, the irony that Tywin will never, ever acknowledge. Tyrion is the most like him. Not Jaime with his sword, not Cersei with her ambition. Tyrion, the one who thinks 3 moves ahead, the one who understands politics and people and power, the one who saved King's Landing at the Battle of the Blackwater while Tywin was still marching south. Tyrion is his father's true heir in every way that matters, and Tywin would rather die than admit it, because admitting it means admitting that the son he despises is the only one who inherited his genius. And that truth is too painful for a man as proud as Tywin to bear. Now, let's talk about the Blackwater, because this is Tywin at the peak of his power as a military strategist. Stannis Baratheon is bearing down on King's Landing with a massive fleet. The city is undermanned. Joffrey is useless. And Tyrion, acting as hand, has done everything he can, including the wildfire trap that destroys half of Stannis' fleet. But it's not enough. The walls are being breached. Stannis' men are pouring through. Cersei is sitting on the Iron Throne with poison in her hand, ready to kill herself and Tommen rather than be captured. And notice what's happening behind the scenes here, because it's a perfect showcase of Tywin's strategic mind. While his grandson's city is under siege, Tywin isn't panicking. He's calculating. He's already brokered the alliance with House Tyrell, the 3rd largest army in Westeros, led to him on a silver platter by Littlefinger's negotiations after Renly's death. Tywin saw the opportunity and seized it with both hands. Together, they form a force that Stannis cannot withstand. It's the kind of move that defines Tywin, not the flashy cavalry charge, but the diplomatic groundwork that made the charge possible. He won the Battle of the Blackwater in a meeting room weeks before the first arrow was fired. And then Tywin arrives, leading the Lannister Tyrell cavalry in a thundering charge that shatters Stannis' army from behind. He walks into the throne room, into the silence after the storm, and delivers 3 words that carry the weight of an empire.
We have won.
He's declared savior of the city. He rides his horse straight into the throne room to accept the honor, and the animal leaves a pile of dung on the floor. Nobody says a word, because nobody tells Tywin Lannister that his horse just defecated in front of the Iron Throne. That's the kind of power he holds, the kind where even your horse's bowel movements are above reproach. Now notice what Tywin does immediately after the Blackwater. He doesn't celebrate, he doesn't rest, he reorganizes. He shunts his wounded son, Tyrion, the man who actually designed the wildfire defense that saved the city, into a cramped room and strips him of the hand title. No gratitude, no acknowledgement. Tyrion saved King's Landing, and Tywin acts like it never happened, because giving Tyrion credit would mean admitting that the despised dwarf is valuable, and Tywin would rather let the city burn than make that concession. And almost immediately, Tywin is already making his next move. Look at how he handles the Tyrell Alliance, a perfect example of his strengths and his blind spots working in tandem. When he discovers that the Tyrells are plotting to marry Sansa Stark to Loras, Tywin doesn't just block the move. He counters it with brutal efficiency. He forces Tyrion to marry Sansa instead, securing the north for the Lannisters.
You will wed her, bed her, and put a child in her.
And then, for good measure,
You'll marry Sir Loras.
binding the Tyrells even tighter. Both of his children protest, both of them beg, and Tywin sits there, unmoved, watching his own son and daughter plead with him, and he simply overrules their humanity, because the house comes first, the name comes first, their happiness is irrelevant. And this leads to one of the most electric confrontations in the whole show: Tywin versus Olenna Tyrell. Two master strategists, two ruthless family patriarchs, sitting across a table and going to war with words. Olenna is arguably the only person in the show who isn't afraid of Tywin, and you can see it throws him. She parries his threats with wit. She mocks his seriousness. She calls him out on his hypocrisy. And when Tywin tries to use Loras's sexuality as leverage, threatening to have him named to the Kingsguard, which would strip him of his inheritance and end the Tyrell line, Olenna fires back.
Brothers and sisters, that stain would be very difficult to wash out.
The room goes silent, and for one of the very few times in the entire show, you can see Tywin flinch. Not much, just a flicker, but it's there. Olenna found the crack in the armor, the one subject Tywin cannot control, the one scandal his gold and his fear cannot make disappear. He wins the negotiation, because he always wins negotiations. But Olenna walks away, knowing exactly where the wound is, and that knowledge will come back to haunt the Lannisters. Well, but winning alliances and arranging marriages isn't enough for Tywin. He needs to win the war too. And this is where his cold pragmatism reaches its darkest expression: the Red Wedding. Look, the Red Wedding is the single most devastating political move in the entire show, and it's pure Tywin. He doesn't fight Robb Stark's army on the field. He's tried that, and Robb kept outmaneuvering him. The young wolf beat Tywin's forces again and again, capturing Jaime, winning every battle he fought, and Tywin, a man whose pride cannot stomach being beaten by a teenager, refuses to keep playing a game he's losing. So Tywin does what Tywin does best. He finds the weak links. He reaches out to Walder Frey, a bitter old man who feels disrespected by the Starks. He reaches out to Roose Bolton, an ambitious lord who sees which way the wind is blowing. And he orchestrates a massacre under the sacred protection of guest right, the one law that even the worst lords in Westeros are supposed to honor. He collaborates with both men to slaughter the Stark family and end the War of the Five Kings with barely any blood lost from his own army. In Tywin's mind, this is elegant, efficient.
Killed 10,000 men in battle than a dozen at dinner.
And here's the detail that really chills me. The Rains of Castamere plays during the massacre, the same song Tywin had written after destroying House Rain, the same song that's been his calling card for decades. It plays while Robb's men are being butchered, while Catelyn Stark watches her son die, while the sacred laws of hospitality are shattered beyond repair. Tywin isn't just killing the Starks, he's signing the murder with his name. He wants everyone to know exactly who did this and why. Because in Tywin's world, the fear of the act is just as important as the act itself. The thing is, when Tyrion confronts his father about it afterward, Tywin's defense is chilling in its logic. He frames mass murder as efficiency, as pragmatism, as the responsible choice. And the worst part, by his own twisted math, he's not entirely wrong. The war does end, the Stark army is destroyed, the North falls in line. On paper, it works, but Tywin doesn't see, or doesn't care, that some victories come at a cost that can't be calculated.
The Northerners will never forget.
The North will remember. The phrase will be despised forever, and the Lannister name, for all its power, will carry the stain of the Red Wedding alongside the memory of Castamere. His overwhelming pride blinds him to the consequences of his actions. He underestimated Robb Stark for most of the war, and now he underestimates the long memory of the North. Tywin wins the war and poisons the legacy in the same stroke. That's the paradox at the center of everything he does. Every victory contains the seed of a future defeat he refuses to see coming. And the Red Wedding isn't even the oldest debt that Tywin refuses to acknowledge. Think about the Martells. During Robert's rebellion, when Tywin finally decided to join the winning side, he ordered the sack of King's Landing. His men stormed the city, and during that sack, Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, Tywin's most savage attack dog, murdered Princess Elia Martell and her children, raped her, killed her children, and then killed her. On Tywin's orders, or at the very least, with his full knowledge and approval. Tywin never denied it. He never apologized. He simply filed it under necessary cost of securing the throne for Robert. But the Martells of Dawn didn't file it anywhere. They carried that rage for decades, and when Oberyn Martell finally arrives in King's Landing, the first thing he makes clear,
"Tell your father I'm here, and tell him the Lannisters aren't the only ones who pay their debts."
he's here for justice. He's here for blood. Tywin treats Oberyn's fury as a minor political inconvenience, something to be managed, redirected, bought off, because that's how Tywin sees everything, as a problem to be solved with gold or fear. He never grasps that some wounds can't be bought and some hatreds can't be scared into silence. Again, this is the pattern that defines Tywin's entire life. He wins every battle and loses every relationship. He outsmarts every enemy and alienates every ally. He builds the most powerful house in Westeros and fills it with children who despise him, right? Actually, think about what that moment reveals.
Good man does everything in his power to better his family's position.
Tywin claims that everything he does is for his family. He says it over and over. Family is the most important thing. But what he really means is the family name, the reputation, the legacy, not the actual people, not Jaime's desire to be more than a glorified bodyguard, not Cersei's desperate need to be seen as an equal, not Tyrion's longing to be acknowledged as a worthy son. Tywin doesn't see those needs because he can't afford to. And this blindness extends to everyone around him, including the king. When Tywin becomes Hand of the King to Joffrey, watch how he handles the boy. He doesn't flatter him. He doesn't fear him. He simply dismisses him. There's that scene where Joffrey comes to a small council meeting, and Tywin doesn't even look up from his papers. The king of the Seven Kingdoms is standing there, demanding attention.
I am the king! I will punish you.
And Tywin treats him like an interruption.
King is tired. See him to his chambers.
He sends Joffrey to bed like a child, and Joffrey goes, because Joffrey, the same sadistic brat who had Ned Stark executed, who terrorized Sansa, who defied his own mother at every turn, is genuinely afraid of his grandfather. And then there's Cersei. Now, Cersei is a fascinating case because she is, in many ways, Tywin's most devoted student. She internalized his philosophy more deeply than either of her brothers. She believes in the family name. She believes in power through fear.
Did it ever occur to you that I might be the one who deserves your confidence and your trust, not Jaime or Tyrion, but me?
She has spent her entire life trying to be the son Tywin always wanted, trying to prove that she can be as cold, as calculating, as ruthless as him. And Tywin's response to all of that effort? Dismissal. He married her off to Robert Baratheon without asking what she wanted. He criticizes her for failing to control Joffrey. He tells her flatly,
I don't distrust you because you're a woman. I distrust you because you're not as smart as you think you are.
And when she tries to argue that she's been his most faithful child, that she followed his advice, that she can contribute to the legacy, he doesn't even dignify it with a real response. He just assigns her another marriage to Loras Tyrell, like she's a piece of furniture being moved to a different room. The tragedy of Cersei is that she became exactly what Tywin raised her to be, and he still couldn't see her. He created a monster in his own image and then complained about the monster. So, here we are at the end. Tyrion has been accused of murdering Joffrey, a crime he didn't commit. He's been condemned to death by a trial that Tywin orchestrated, in a system that Tywin controls. The woman Tyrion loved, Shae, has been put on the stand to testify against him. The champion Tyrion chose for trial by combat has been killed. Everything has been rigged. And on the night before his execution, Tyrion escapes with the help of Jaime and Varys. But he doesn't run. He climbs to the Tower of the Hand. He finds Shae, the woman he loved, the woman Tywin swore he'd kill if Tyrion didn't send her away, in his father's bed. The hypocrisy is staggering. Tywin, who shamed Tyrion endlessly for loving a sex worker, who threatened to hang the next one he found in Tyrion's bed, has been sleeping with Shae himself. And then Tyrion picks up a crossbow and finds Tywin in the one place where the most powerful man in Westeros is completely vulnerable. The privy. You know, there's something almost poetic about where Tywin dies. The man who controlled everything, kings, armies, marriages, the economy of an entire continent, is killed sitting on a toilet. All the gold, all the power, all the fear he spent a lifetime cultivating, none of it can stop a single bolt from the crossbow of the son he refused to love. And when Tywin's body is laid in state afterward, the show makes a point of telling us something. It stinks. The great Tywin Lannister, in death, is as ungraceful and undignified as any common man. The power, the legacy, the fear, all of it died with him. None of it transferred. None of it lasted. The lion's roar was, in the end, just noise. And there's a callback here that's easy to miss. Remember that first scene, Tywin gutting the stag, lecturing Jaime about how the family name is all that matters. He told his son,
Lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep.
He said it with such absolute conviction, such total certainty, that the Lannister name was above reproach, above consequence, above the petty concerns of lesser men. And now, here he is, the lion himself, dead on a privy, killed by the sheep he wouldn't deign to acknowledge as his son. The man who built his entire identity on the idea that Lannisters are superior to everyone else, dies in the most humiliatingly human way possible. That's not just irony. That's the show's thesis statement on Tywin Lannister, delivered with a crossbow bolt, and that's the lesson of Tywin Lannister's arc. He was right about almost everything. Fear works. Pragmatism wins wars. A quill and paper can accomplish more than a sword. But he was catastrophically wrong about the one thing that matters most. You cannot build a legacy on fear alone, because fear requires constant maintenance. Fear demands that you never show weakness, never admit fault, never let anyone close enough to see you as human. And the moment you're gone, the moment the fearsome patriarch is lying dead with a crossbow bolt in his chest, the fear evaporates, and all that's left are the people you hurt, the children you broke, the love you refused to give. Basically, Tywin Lannister won every war, outsmarted every rival, and built the most powerful house the Seven Kingdoms had ever seen. His overwhelming pride led him to believe he was superior to all, that he could control kings, orchestrate massacres, and treat his children like chess pieces without consequence. He underestimated enemies like Robb Stark. He ignored the rage of the Martells over the sack of King's Landing. He dismissed every warning, every sign that his cruelty was creating enemies faster than his gold could buy allies. And his greatest creation, his legacy, his name, the thing he sacrificed everything for, was undone by the one weapon he never learned to wield, the love of his own children. You know, people call Tywin a master administrator, and he was, a brilliant strategist, and he was, a fearsome patriarch who restored House Lannister from a laughingstock to the most powerful family in Westeros. And he did. But at the end of the day, fear is a currency with an expiration date. Tywin's entire philosophy, that it is better to be feared than loved, failed its final test the moment his own blood turned the weapon on him. Joanna's death broke something in Tywin that he never repaired. He spent the rest of his life trying to fill that void with power, with control, with the family name. But names don't love you back, and power doesn't grieve for you when you're gone. After Tywin dies, watch what happens to House Lannister. It falls apart. Cersei spirals into paranoia and self-destruction. Jaime drifts further and further from everything the family stands for. Tyrion flees across the sea and eventually joins Tywin's greatest enemy. The alliances Tywin forged, the Tyrells, the Freys, the Boltons, all crumble within a handful of years. Every single relationship Tywin built on fear dissolves the moment the fearful thing is gone. That's his real legacy, not the gold, not the name, not Castamere or the Blackwater or the Red Wedding. His real legacy is a broken family, a burning city, and 3 children who each, in their own way, spend the rest of the show trying to either become him or escape him. None of them succeed at either. The Rains of Castamere can play all night long, but nobody's listening anymore.